so that we know that part will work very well. I'm also a lawyer, so it's my great pleasure. We will uh, Judy will go first, and then we'll do Bill. So it's my pleasure now to introduce Judy. Judy graduated from Miami University in 1966, a year before I graduated from college, and went to Indiana University School of Law. When I went to law school, there were only 6 women in the class. I think when Judy went there, it was still quite unusual to be a woman in a law school class. She has practiced law in Southwest Florida for about 35 years. She's been in a number of areas. She's been primarily in a small firm or in practice for herself. She is the chancellor, which is an old fashioned term for a lawyer for the church, our church, St. Michael's. And she also, interestingly enough, served 2 terms on the Sanibel Planning Commission and served as a city councilman for a term. And I think she will be able to tell us something about how she became a Christian and how that impacted her choice of career and how it impacted how she does law. So, Judy, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you all for being here this evening. How I became a Christian is I was born into being a Christian. I was uh, a member of the Episcopal Church from birth and grew up in the Episcopal Church and got all the attendance awards and so forth. So um, I guess you could say I've always been a Christian and my faith has always been very important to me. Um, it it's not exactly what spurred me to go into the practice of law. When I graduated from college, women really could be nurses or secretaries or teachers. So I got a teaching certificate and I taught for a while. Then I got married, had a couple of kids, and I was working on Sanibel in a cookware store. I was a retail clerk and I had a friend of mine was working there with me, Chris was her name. And we used to talk about how we're going to spend the rest of our lives. And I'd also been on the planning commission, as Jonathan mentioned, and I would watch these attorneys come before us all the time. And I thought, I don't want to be a retail clerk for the rest of my life. And I think I could probably do as good a job before the planning commissioner as some of these attorneys did. So I decided that as a lark, more or less, really as a lark, I thought I'd go take the LSAT and see what happened. And I did. I went over to Miami and took the LSAT at U of Miami one Saturday morning. And when my scores came back, they were surprisingly good, I thought. So I thought, well, gee, maybe I better actually apply for law school. And I had talked to a couple of female friends of mine who went to law school and successfully. They were practicing attorneys at that time. And I talked to both of them about this, and they both told me, don't do it. They said, this is crazy. It's too much work. It's a huge commitment. You have 2 small children. You don't want to do this, really. And so, of course, I did it. I naturally decided I had to apply to law school. So I applied to 2 schools. One was University of North Carolina. The other one was IU, Bloomington, Indiana University in Bloomington. I got a denial from North Carolina by return mail, but I was accepted at IU. And as I mentioned, my friend was also thinking about going back to school. She applied at North Carolina because she was interested in environmental studies and they had a good program. Well, she also got denied and they told her she should apply to IU. So we took this as a sign. We thought, this sounds like something maybe we both should be doing. So she applied to IU, she was accepted, and we then got busy getting our ducks in a row to go to school. Her mother was able to purchase a house in Bloomington, a 4-bedroom house. I had my 2 small children, 8 and 10 years old, and she had a 6-year-old daughter. And so we needed a fairly big house. Well, her mom bought this house for an investment for us and let us pay rent. And we lived there. I lived there for 2 of the 3 years I was in law school. And it was just, I mean, it couldn't have been better. In addition, it was Indiana, which was, my parents lived in Indianapolis at the time, actually Carmel. So it was very easy. So, I mean, I guess the long and short of it is the way I went to law school was, I feel like my faith guided me. God guided me. It wasn't something I had set out to do. It was just something that everything fell into place. And it was one of those things that, you better do it. So I found myself at Indiana University in the fall of 1981. And I was petrified. I had no clue what law school was going to be like. There was no lawyers in my family and nothing like that. But I went ahead, I went to classes. I loved the classes, but taking exams, that was something else. I was petrified. So one way that my faith helped me in law school was I used to sing, you probably know there's a song from a Bible verse, be not afraid. Be not afraid, I go before you always. I think we just heard that recently in a sermon or something. Anyway, I used to sing that in my head over and over again. Marching to class, I would be singing in my head, be not afraid, I go before you always. And somehow or other, I managed to pass that first semester, and the rest of it is history. It was really an amazing experience. Then I had, of course, after I graduated, I had to find a job. One of the other things that was interesting was, I'd been on the Sanibel Planning Commission, and one day early in my law school career, first semester, I found a note with my name on it up on the bulletin board in the law school lobby. And I looked at this note and it said, please report to the city attorney's office immediately. And I thought, okay, what have I done? I was terrified, but I went over there. I went to the city attorney's office, and it turns out that they were very interested in Sanibel's land use plan. And they had called the city of Sanibel and talked to Neil Bowen, who was the city attorney at that time. And he said, well, you've got somebody in your law school right now that's very familiar with the Sanibel land use plan. And her name's Judy Workman, and you should call her. So they did. And that ended up the way that I was able to get a job. I worked at the city attorney's office in Bloomington all through law school. So that was another, I don't call it a coincidence. I don't know what to call it, but I think it was God in control of my life one more time. So that was a surprise for me, and an exciting experience. Okay, so then I had to find a job. So once I graduated, I sent out about 200 resumes all over. I didn't think I would come back to Florida, but so I actually was offered a job in Bloomington, but I also didn't think I wanted to stay in Bloomington. But I got about 3 or 4 out of 200 letters, 3 or 4 interviews. I think one was in Pensacola, one was in Tampa or someplace, and one was in Immokalee. So I went out to Immokalee, and I interviewed with these 2 male attorneys who had a practice there, and they wanted to hire me. They offered me the job, and then I went back to Sanibel and talked to a few people, and my ex-husband, Dick, he decided that wasn't such a good idea for me to be going out to Immokalee to work. So he talked to this law firm in Fort Myers, and I got an interview with them thanks to him. So they ended up hiring me. And so I worked there for several years. Well, they thought it would be a good idea to have someone in their firm that lived on Sanibel, because they wanted to open a branch office on Sanibel. So they did that. They bought a little condo. They fixed it all up. They decorated it for a woman attorney. green and blue, green and pink, and it was really lovely. And they put me in that office, in charge of that office. Now I barely was out of law school. I'd barely been sworn in to the bar, and I had no clue what I was doing. Well, that was a very interesting experience. They told me, of course, we will be there. There were 3 partners in that firm at that time, and all 3 of them insisted all I had to do was pick up the phone and they would be there no matter what. They would always be there. Well, that was just not true. I was pretty much on my own, didn't know what I was doing. I had some very interesting experiences there, and that actually didn't last very long. I don't know what they did with that office. I guess they rented it out or something, but I ended up going back downtown to the law firm downtown and working. But one of the things that happened while I was out there in that office, I had a couple of real estate closings. One of them, the realtor came in to the office. The closing was going to be in my office. The sellers were there, the realtor was there, and the buyer came in literally with a duffel bag full of $300,000 cash. And when this came in, I did not know what to do. I called the firm downtown. I said, what am I supposed to do with it? No help. Nobody was available. So I just more or less went ahead, did the closing, relied on the realtor. We took the money in the duffel bag with the purchaser down to the Bank of the Islands, walked in with this duffel bag full of cash, and Bank of the Islands was wonderful. They had a machine that could count it all as fast as it was in the blink of an eye. They had it all counted, all taken care of. The property closed. The guy got his house. You tell me what was going on. I don't know, but it worked. He purchased the property. So that was one very interesting thing that happened to me while I was practicing law on Sanibel. What does this have to do with my faith? Well, I could not have done it without my faith. I could not have done it if I didn't know that I could rely on Christ and on God to take care of me, to guide me, to make sure that whatever I was doing was the right thing to do. And mostly, I've been very fortunate, and I've been protected and taken care of over and over again. I had one client come in one time that I can't even remember what I did for him. Maybe it was a will or a trust or something like that, because I did a lot of that, still do a lot of that. And for some reason, I remember the bill was $400. He paid the bill, but he was hugely angry about it for some reason. I have no recollection of what was wrong. But I thought, now what should I do? What is the right thing to do here? Well, I don't know what you would have done, but I just sent his money back, and I said, I'm sorry that you were disappointed. I'm sorry that you weren't happy with the work. Here's your money back. I can't take it if you're not happy. Now, I know there aren't very many lawyers who would do that, because, I did the job, but he was unhappy, and I didn't want to have an unhappy client. That also happened in the Sanibel office. I came back, I moved back downtown to help, to work in the downtown office again. And by then there were more attorneys in that firm. Most of them were men. The women who had been there were all leaving. I was the last holdout. I was the last woman that they finally let go because they didn't have enough office space. They decided they needed my office for a young attorney who was a, influential Fort Myers family. So that was it. I was out. And so I said, okay, now what? I wasn't very happy. I was miserable for a while, but I was able to start my own practice. I started my own practice in my house on Sanibel, and people came and, hired me. And I was amazed that happened, but it did. I guess I put a notice in in the local paper or something that I was opening a practice on Sanibel. And then one day, lo and behold, Sheila Hoon walked in. Some of you will know Sheila from church. And she had just passed the bar in Florida. She had just moved to Florida from Oklahoma and had been a practicing attorney in Oklahoma. And she took the Florida bar and just passed. She came in. She said, you know, Judy, if you ever need somebody to help you do research, I'm available. So I said, fantastic. So Sheila and I joined together and opened an office together. And we practiced several years on Sanibel. We were the first female law firm on Sanibel. And that went really well for quite a long time. And I was just thinking back about, what is it about, why is it that people think that the practice of law has to be something other than full of faith, something other than important, have that you can have your faith and belief a part of it. In my experience, I could not have practiced law all these years without my faith. It was always a part of everything I did. I think in retrospect, more than anything else, I can see how God's hand was always in everything that happened. There is no logical reason why I, a teacher from Indiana, should end up practicing law in Sanibel, Florida. But it was, it was serendipity. It was one of the greatest experience of my life. And I'm forever grateful.
Thank you, Judy. So it's interesting. You did experience some discrimination along the way, I gather, but it didn't seem to hold you back very much.
I think you just have to brush those things off. Maybe in retrospect, there were times when I should have done something about it, sued somebody or filed some sort of ethics complaint or something. I don't know. At the time, I just, what I needed to do was get on with my life. I mean, the first thing that happened right out of the box when I was sworn in Florida, I filed papers. I was assigned to do a landlord-tenant case, and I filed a petition to evict these tenants, and I filed in the court. Well, I got a phone call from the judge's office saying, "Who is this Judy Workman person? Get her over here. I want to see her." And I had to show up right that very minute in his courtroom, and I had to explain myself because he didn't believe just seeing my signature on the paper that I was authorized to file this paper. So I did. I went and I explained that I was a new attorney with this law firm, and my boss was so and so, and that he had authorized me to do this. And he said, "Well," he said, "I'm not accepting this until your boss tells me it's okay." So, I said, I went back to the office and I said, "Look, you're going to have to call the judge and tell him it's okay for me to file this paper." So that was an interesting thing. And then the other thing that stands out in my memory is when I was actually let go at the law firm, the senior partner called me in one day and he said, you should not worry that you don't have a lot of billable hours, because I'm giving all of the big real estate deals to this other attorney, a male attorney who was, who had also been hired about the same time I had, actually after I was hired. I'm giving him all these big real estate deals. So it looks good for him on paper. He's making a lot of money for the firm, and you're not, but you're doing the very important things. You're doing the condominium law, the landlord and tenant law, things like this. He said, "You should not worry about your position with the firm." And then, I don't know, it wasn't, 6 months later that I was out because they just didn't have room for me in the office anymore. But it was the best thing that really happened to me because the practice of law in Sanibel was just very gratifying. And people come to Sanibel from all over the world, as you know. So it's not just a local group of people. You could be talking to anybody from anywhere in the world. It was fascinating.
Very, very, very good. Now we're going to turn. That, and by the way, we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end, so people should feel free to ask their own questions. But we'll now turn to Bill Coffey, whose career sort of is the. Judy started out with a law firm and ended up practicing on her own. Bill's story, first of all, Bill went to engineering school rather than the liberal arts school and went into the somewhat different area of law, patent and intellectual property law. And he also started out in a firm of 3 people and ended up joining the largest law firm in Indianapolis, and in part because of the intellectual property power that he added to that firm. That firm is now one of the major law firms in the United States. And so Bill has, Bill's, I heard some of Bill's story in his presentation to the Sacred Ground section we had just before this, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about Bill's experience as a Christian and as a lawyer. Bill.
Thank you. I'm really interested in talking about the difference between Judy's practice and our big law firm practice. 350 lawyers is a lot of lawyers. 650 lawyers, a lot of lawyers. When I joined Barnes & Thornburg in 1982 with my 9-lawyer firm, there were only 135 lawyers. When I retired in 2005, there were 350 lawyers. Now there's 650 lawyers. I had a firm of 9 lawyers. We became a department at Barnes & Thornburg. 9 lawyers became a department when in 1982. There's now 115 lawyers in my department, which I can't even imagine that myself. There were 65 when I retired in 2005. Numbers are frightening. Size is frightening for me because I started out with Harold Hood and Herb Minturn, 2 guys. One was 62, one was 70, one was 64, and one was 72. I went in with 2 older guys. So it'll be a different style of practice that Judy was thinking about and talking about. It's hard to talk about a law firm unless you know your audience knows something about it. They have suspicions that lawyers are trying to make too much money or a whole bunch of other things. Always that question, how much are you going to charge and so forth. But we'll talk about some of the issues. Actually, I wanted to be a lawyer for very good reason. I didn't want to work for hard physical work. My dad said, it's clear you don't like to work. Why don't you become a lawyer? Now, his interest in me being a lawyer and his thinking about that is they sold Grandpa's farm. He and his brothers and sisters, 5 of them, sold Grandpa's farm where we lived, where we worked. They got out of that farm. Each child got less than the lawyer got for handling the transaction. Now, it was a tough transaction. Dad didn't understand it, but underground mineral rights, so forth, jacked up the bill. But the land wasn't worth much, whatever. But Dad was impressed that the lawyer, for a little bit of work, he thought, physical work, he didn't think about. Dad got less than the lawyer got. But he kept saying, this will be better than work. And he pointed out different people in that area who were lawyers. One guy had the farm we worked on sometime. So I started thinking about being a lawyer when I was a young kid. I also thought about not cleaning chicken houses, taking up cleaning barns and stuff like that, or unloading trucks. I wanted to be a lawyer. Actually read the newspapers about lawyers, read lawyer reports about trials and what have you, as a young kid. And I would tell people I'm going to be a lawyer. And they'd say, uh-huh, uh-huh. They weren't very impressed. No. Talk about religion a little bit. I was one of 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls, and we went to a Baptist church. The Baptist church, in this particular Baptist church, tried to get all the kids to be saved. And they worked on us. When a 13, 14-year-old, they worked on us. Get your older brothers and sisters who were helping work on us, take us through the program of being saved. I became saved because I thought it was the thing to do. I thought Jesus was a fine guy. He was going to take care of us. Accept Jesus, and Jesus would protect you. Jesus will save you. That was my experience. The Baptist program at that church, in that area, was after you became saved, you studied and worked with them, and then you get baptized. It occurred to me, and I was a smart aleck kid, that if I was saved by Jesus, going out into a pond did not seem to be in order. So I was not baptized. That was an interesting aspect of my Christian life. I was saved, but not baptized. I went to Evansville. My father moved us to Evansville after 1 year of high school, and I attended 3 years of high school in Wrights High School in Evansville, Indiana. I went to the guidance counselor in the senior year and said, I want a scholarship or help going to pre-law because I want to be a lawyer. He told me that there was substantially no chance of me getting a scholarship for pre-law. But with your math scores, I can get you into the Whirlpool Corporation's co-op engineering program, and you become an engineer. That financially seemed okay. My dad had emphasized math, and that helped Whirlpool think I was a scholarship student. I went to engineering school on Whirlpool scholarship. Became an engineering graduate. Started in 1955 in the School of Engineering. Met a young lady named Liz Romine. First week or so, she latched onto my arm and said, I'm going to be your partner. And we started do-si-doing together. We were in a gym class. Everybody in college in those days had to take phys ed. The only class available to engineering students was square dancing. She wanted me to be a partner of hers so she wouldn't have to dance the boys' part. We became friends. We became pals. She rode to school with me in my car. That was very important to her. And we got married in 1958. We were 21 years old. She turned out to be an Episcopalian. Episcopalian, where she was sure that I had to become Episcopalian. We went downtown to the Church of St. Paul's in Evansville, Indiana, and went through confirmation class. The bishop came down to confirm us, 5 or 6 of us, on a Sunday night, and was talking about my previous baptism and so forth. I said, pardon me, I haven't been baptized. The bishop of the Episcopal Church in Southern Indiana, John Crane, baptized me with Liz's father and mother being there as godparents. I became Episcopalian in 1958, moved to Indianapolis in 1959. The engineering school behind me. Now I was going to work as an engineer and go to law school at night. I didn't want to be an engineer, but I had to work to go to law school. The Navy had a program in 3 cities where you could work as an engineer for the civil servant, engineer for the Navy, and go to night law school. And I got admitted to 3 law schools, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and Indianapolis, and worked for the Navy in one of those 3 cities. So we chose Indianapolis. We decided later never to leave Indianapolis, which is an interesting thing. But while we moved to Indianapolis after I graduated in 1959, we went to church the first Sunday, and I ended up dipping ice cream with a guy named Frank Oglesby. Frank Oglesby was the #2 engineer at Naval Avionics Facility where I was going to be working. And I was dipping ice cream by him, and we became friends. He took care of me for the years I worked for the Navy and managed to get me good assignments, good titles, so that I would have that in my resume. He was a very close friend. We kept together for many years. He and his wife and Liz and I. Here was a guy helping me become an important person, which I wasn't, but I got the title of Program Manager of Advanced Electronics. Program Manager of Advanced Electronics was big in those days because everybody was interested in advanced electronics at that time in the early 60s. I was the program manager for the Naval Avionics Facility with 500 engineers because of Frank Oglesby. I graduated from law school with an engineering degree, a law degree, 5 years of engineering experience, and nobody would give me a job paying half of what I was making as an engineer. The typical law school graduate in 1963 was making $5,000 to $6,000 a year as top pay in your first years of practicing law. My wife wanted to quit teaching school and have kids. Taking a job like that was not very economically sound, she thought. But there's always other jobs out of the city, but we decided to stay in the city. I was offered jobs away from Indianapolis at very high pay if I would be a lawyer and work for a Department of Defense contractor as a lawyer with my Navy experience and law degree and so forth. I wouldn't take those jobs. The dean of the law school sent PR Mallory to me. They came to me and said that we'd like for you to be a patent attorney trainee, and we will pay you what you're making as an engineer to be a trainee in patent. I didn't intend to be a patent lawyer. That was too much like being an engineer, but they were willing to pay me to be a trainee. I took that job not knowing what it meant to be a patent attorney, but I was willing to try. I'd gone to engineering school instead of going to pre-law school. Things happened to me, change of directions. So typically, I did what seemed to be the way to do it at the time. I lasted a year at PR Mallory. They started talking about maybe I'd be better off in Boston because that's where they had their research operation in advanced electronics. I wasn't interested in going to Boston. I wasn't interested in leaving Indiana, the Indianapolis area. And I was wondering about what's going to happen to me. I went to a state bar association patent section meeting. And at that meeting, I said, as they went around the table, I said, I was Bill Coffey and I worked at PR Mallory. I didn't give a speech about anything or talk about anything. But a gentleman approached me named Harold Hood. And he said, why don't you consider coming into private practice with Herb Minturn and me? These are the guys. Harold was 64 and Herb was 72. Come in and work with us and take over our practice when we quit. And that is how I became a practitioner in private practice in patent law, where I had left PR Mallory after a year and a day, I think. I was with two older guys, and I agreed to work with them, help them, see if I could build a practice. They agreed to help me find work to do. One of the jobs that Harold found for me was working for Eli Lilly. Everett Smith at Eli Lilly was chief patent counsel, and he was a good friend of Harold Hood. So he would give me work to do, pay me to do it, pay his senior people to teach me how to do it, to correct my work. He was just getting me started because he was a friend of Harold Hood's. He later came into my office as a general counsel in my own patent law office with me. We moved to 1982. That's when I had, after Harold Hood and Herb Minturn had died, both died July of 1974. I built a firm and 9 lawyers moved it into Barnes and Thornburg in 1982. Now, church work. My faith, remember, I'm saved with Jesus, baptized with the bishop, and an Episcopalian. We went to the Church of the Nativity on the east side of Indianapolis, and it was a very good church to go to. We had good times, good parties. The men would go back and have coffee together while the women looked after the kids or whatever happened. It was a good place to go on Sunday morning and take your kids. But things were happening in that church, which for sure I didn't know about. First of all, the senior warden left, and I was asked to be the senior warden. Not knowing any better, I said yes. I didn't want to, but I said yes. Became a senior warden, and shortly thereafter, I was called by the bishop's office. The Bishop Crane, the same guy who baptized me in Evansville, Indiana, wanted me to show up in his office, leave my office and go to his office. And he told me that he was glad I was senior warden because I had something that he had something that we had to do, which is remove the rector. And I asked him, how exactly does this work? I don't know much about being senior warden, and you're telling me I have to deal with that. We will help you. In any event, I became senior warden of a church without a rector and took over the way I managed things and became an operator of Church of Nativity. The bishop wasn't feeling good and his staff was tired of taking care of things. They didn't help much. So I found rectors or priests that were in town away from other areas. John Crane collected priests from other areas, mostly because they were in trouble where they were. Martin Bell was one of those priests. He was a very good scholar, workshop leader, preacher, teacher, songwriter, book writer. He was very helpful. He also had a detective agency, which we used in our law firm to check. He was a private detective, Episcopalian priest with a lot of talent. he came to our church and was very attractive to our audiences, our people, and became very helpful to us. We had other people, we had Hal Taylor, who rode on a motorcycle. He was a priest, and he had been a car dealer. We had a professor from the CTS, Old Testament professor. So we had a group of people willing to help a group of nativity develop our understanding of Jesus, understanding of what's going on in the world, and what we should be doing and think about. Along the way, we had a Faith Alive weekend, pressed upon us by the women in the church. They organized it. And we started a men's group that met every Friday morning for about 10 years, maybe 11 and 12 years. I can't figure that out. Every Friday morning at 8 o'clock on Friday morning, the men in the church who wanted to, 5, 4, 5, 6, 10, whatever number, showed up in the back room at Denny's restaurant and had a prayer breakfast. That was the extent of my church administration before I became senior warden, running a prayer breakfast. We were very loose to put together in the 1970s. A lot of I'm okay, you're okay type of thinking in church. Martin Bell was wild and crazy, according to people who commented on him taking so much interest in our parish. Hal Taylor was a problem for his teaching. And then we finally got a rector, David Lowry, and Bishop Jones, with replaced Father John Crane. They came out to work with us. Bishop Jones said he had never been a bishop before. David Lowry's first, never had a parish before. And we had a group of people that were very active. And they went to work on us, tried to settle us down and get us looking like a parish that should look. And their help to us was enormous. Ted Jones was a very, very good friend, and we were very close for years. His wife still visits with us and stays in our condo.
Bill, we need to open this up for questions pretty soon, but could you tell us a little bit about how what you described to us in the prior session with you about how your concern for fairness really changed the culture of Barnes and Thornburg?
Well, I had a certain amount of faith and a certain amount of understanding of what's right, what feels good, what Christians would do, maybe. I didn't think about it in that sort of terms, but I had decided to be a good person. And joining the large law firm was a real shock. They came to me because I had a very productive, high technology, very modern thinking firm. And they wanted to put that into this large law firm. 2 people came to me for the law firm. I knew both of them. We were still friends today, very close friends. They came and asked me to join. But when they got us over there, they took a look at us and said, well, this is different. And what I found out is I was in a law firm with a straitjacket on. They had the very best law school students from the very best law schools recruited and brought in, and maybe keep 3 out of 30 after 8 years. 10% would maybe be high. Sometimes keep 4 or 5 associates that they recruit, bring in, and keep in the head. They operate under what you will remember, Jonathan, as the up or out theory. You either made the grade after the 4th or 5th year. If you didn't look like a business developer or like somebody that was going to be important to the law firm, you were shipped out, given the word in advance that you had to go get a job. That was very, very common in those days. And that was the law firm that had drawn us into the. I went in as a capital partner, as a senior partner, without all the roughness that goes on with getting to be a partner. But I had people working with me that they took a look at and said, this doesn't look like partnership material to us. But I wouldn't let them do the up or out on my people. And that we had quite a bit of conflict. And essentially, it took time and effort and strife, but accepted finally that they had to keep us because we were growing. And we were growing the firm, and we were cross-selling the firm, and we were successful. They kept looking at the associates I had and the associates I was bringing in, saying, why do we want this guy? Why do we want that guy? This guy has a PhD in zoology or biology or molecular biology or biochemistry. That's why I want him, because he's smart, he has a good law degree. I want this guy. He didn't fit their mold, but that was the problem. Now, the law firm today has totally changed. And the reason it is that they took in so many people like Bill Coffey and his crowd that the outsiders got to in a position of control. The managing partner today is the guy that I brought in, Bob Grand. He's a very well-known guy in Indiana, but he's managing partner of our law firm, and I brought him in through a judge, personal friend. He's now the managing partner. He's an outsider. He brought in other outsiders. When it shook out after a few years, we had more outsiders doing well than we had formerly insiders. That's how it began to change. Now we have people looking for diversity. We have a diversity lawyer, sole purpose of which her job is to look for diversity, do what we have to create diversity, people of color, people of all different backgrounds.
You mentioned Eli Lilly coming to you.
Years ago, first thing, Eli Lilly came to me and suggested I didn't have any women in my department. And they were very stern about this. We're giving you a lot of work to do, and your department doesn't have any women in it. And I did the usual tap dance and said, we don't find women with law degrees and engineering degrees or chemistry degrees and so forth. But we will do our very best, and we will, one way or the other, we will have women in the department. And we did over years, because that's what Lilly and other clients started pressing us on. Interestingly enough, people of color were brought up by other clients a few years later, after get some women in your department. Same issue, find candidates that you can bring into a law firm. Remember that you want to get the very best legal talent you can get, work them as hard as you can, teach them as much as you can, get them to be as profitable as you can, high hourly rates. That's what you're looking for. And you got to have that background in order to get there. Did we have troubles? Yes. It's always difficult to go out and recruit different people from different areas, different backgrounds. You have to find them. You have to, if they're really good candidates, have good law school background, you're going to have competitors, other people. if you don't watch out, your clients will buy them away from you. Your own clients will hire your people if they like the looks of them and they think that would benefit them. Now, issues will happen anytime you get a group of lawyers together, any sizable group, primarily because lawyers are contentious people. Lawyers are used to dealing with opposite sides. There's two sides to every case, at least two. Your side is always right. The side that pays you first is right on the side of right.
Right.
You remember that, Jonathan?
Yep. And indeed, we have 3 lawyers here. Actually, we have to open it up for questions now.
Okay.
Although I like it seems to me that you made good trouble at your law firm and it turned it into a better law firm. It's a good story. But Susie, can you open it up for questions now? We have about 5 minutes.
Yes, I'll move everybody over.
And Susie, you can identify and bring alive a questioner or two, I think.
Yes.
I see 6 of us.
Yep, it takes a few minutes. I have to do it individually.
Okay. Thank you. It's interesting to me that the way the 2 of you have told the stories of how you dealt with these extraordinarily difficult situations with a plum and a Christian attitude, and you both had very fulfilling careers. And so, Susie, how do people indicate that they have a question? Raise their hands or push the
Yeah, if they could raise their hands, and then we will call on them. Hold on, I'm still moving people over. Bill the Nuss, your screen is very dark. We can't see you.
Luann Fortune has her hand up. Oh no, she's left the screen.
The light is behind me.
Okay.
I need some
I turned the light on.
different light.
Okay. All right.
So Luann has her hand up. Can you unmute Luann?
Yep, I just did.
Thank
Okay.
you, Susie. And thank you both, Bill and Judy. And this fascinating presentation. And certainly Bill talked about the perspective of women attorneys. Judy, I am curious from your perspective as a female lawyer, how you experienced a change in your role as a woman lawyer over the years that you practiced. In particular here in Florida, and if your sense is that it might be different if you were practicing in another part of the country.
Oh, I definitely think it would be different in another part of the country. I've always thought that. Southwest Florida is very, very traditional, shall we say, and has taken a long time to wake up to the realities that there are more people in the world than male lawyers. But it's happening, and my practice now, or in the last 10 or so years, has been so limited that I really don't get out. I don't go to court anymore. All of the work that I do is in my office and by mail and so forth. So I don't, I'm not really that familiar with how things are going overall in the legal profession in Southwest Florida. But my experience is that there are some women who have just ignored the whole discrimination thing altogether and have just forged ahead and made it on their own and just didn't accept that there was discrimination. They've just said, no, I'm going to do this, and this is going to be my path, and nobody's going to stop me. And a lot of times they're successful. But I think you have to be a pretty strong woman to be able to do that. And personally, I've taken the path of least resistance, sort of. I mean, I've certainly in the last 20 years, probably, of my career, I've been able to do basically what I wanted to do, work for the clients that I wanted to work for. And I didn't have a lot of pressure or people pulling me in one direction or another. It was, I could sort of set my own way. And I mean, I've never made a lot of money as a lawyer. Obviously, that was not my reason for going into practicing law. But if you wanted to do that, you have to be a whole different kind of person than I am. So that just wasn't going to be something I would be able to do. But I've enjoyed my practice very much, and I enjoyed mostly the clients that I've met, the people that I've worked with, and in most cases, they've all been wonderful.
Wonderful. Okay, I think Roger, you had your hand up. Can you unmute Roger? Susie, can you unmute Roger? Okay, Roger.
I had a question for you. In your careers and your firms, were there meetings that were started with a prayer? Was Christ in your work environment?
No.
In our case, if a client wanted to pray, and we would say, of course, we didn't on our own start the prayers. I didn't know about it if anybody did, but I had several religious-based clients. I had two companies that were really religious, really manufacturing companies. They started every meeting with prayers. They put up with me. I represented several different missionary groups in the international market. They put up with me.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. I see Ann Kimball has her hand up. Ann?
Yes, I was wondering, Bill, I think you were very instrumental in making sure that there were a good many or some women that came into your firm. And I think you also helped some Black people get into your firm. Was there a sort of sensitivity training for these Black people that came? How did you help them acclimate to the firm of yours?
Well, we just tried, is the answer. We didn't have a program until we got enough volume of different people to bring in somebody to work on it. We have a African-American woman who's a lawyer, labor lawyer. She's devoting her full time to diversity and to helping people of minority status in the law firm get along, find their way, and what have you. It's just that we've done that for years. She's been around for 20 years. I know about.
Wonderful.
It's a big effort.
But it's working, you're doing it. So that's what's exciting.
Yeah.
You're bringing them in.
We bring in more women than men now in the new classes. The department I started in the law firm with 115 lawyers now is chaired by a lady that I brought in from the beginning. She is in charge of the whole department. We have another lady that's in charge of the Washington office.
So it seems to me, Bill, you've been making some good trouble at your law firm, and it's worked out. Do we have any other questions? I know Bill has emphasized the importance of ending on time, but and Bill, maybe you could close us off now with your thoughts and maybe a closing prayer. Susie, can you unmute Bill?
Oh, is that me?
That Bill.
Bill.
Oh, this Bill. I didn't know if you were talking about Bill Coffey or about me. Thank you very much to our presenters. Let's give them a round of applause in one way or another. Thank you very much, Bill and Judy, for sharing some of your faith story, some of the people that have been influential along the way. We heard some of that in Bill's story, remembering these folks that even by chance he had encounters with who helped to shape and form his path. And with Judy, just really, I'm always struck by your humility, Judy, and the fact that you really were a trailblazer at a time when women were not entering the field, as you described. You just knew that this was where you wanted to go, and you just kind of kept confronting the next obstacle that might present itself along the way. And I'm really impressed by that. And I thank you both for sharing some of your faith journey, and how you see the hand of God in those things, in perhaps people that are gifted to us along the way, and in pure resolve to forge ahead, even when the voices around might be saying, this is not the thing for you. So thank you both for sharing some of your story. Love to hear people's stories.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here.
Yes, thank you everybody for coming out, and I would be happy to conclude with a prayer.
We would like that.
Gracious God, we thank you for this time together tonight. We thank you for the people who have gathered here, and for all the many ways that you make yourself known to us each and every day. We ask you to continue to bless us, and to bless especially those for whom these days are a particular struggle for whatever reason, that they may know your goodness and your love. We make this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all.